Welcome to Business Mentorship, Keeping It Real. My name's Trish Tonai, founder and host for the series, where we feature entrepreneurs and enterprise leaders who participate in shareyourstories.online. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Carolyn Swora, who is not only a best-selling author for The Rules of Engagement, but she's a coach and speaker, and better known as the Human Spirit Igniter. Carolyn joins us today from Burlington. Welcome.
Thank you, Trish. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, we first met quite some time ago, way back in, I think, 2018 or 2019, when you were really, spreading the word on Rules of Engagement. So tell us a little bit, give us a little update on the book, and then we can talk about where you are now.
Yeah. Well, I think it might have actually been 2017. Yeah. I remember I first met you at a CEO event.
Right.
And so when you say spreading the word, what came to mind for me is I was spreading my wings. I was learning how to fly. And I'm still learning how to fly. I feel like I'm a little close to soaring now than perhaps I was those years ago. And Rules of Engagement, that was my first book out into the world to really share what I was putting together around culture and leadership. So much has changed, as we all know, with the pandemic. But I think the premise of putting people at the core of your business is really what that book was all about. And now with the pandemic, we've certainly learned that. And people who maybe weren't on board are like, oh, whoa, now we get it.
Right.
I'm really proud of that book, my first one. And I'm really happy to say I've got another one coming out next year.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. And is it a sequel or is it on a totally different topic?
Well, I think it's a bit of a sequel, but I guess it is. It's going to be very personal. It's going to be my memoir, and I think what it will talk about are things that will serve us well in the workplace. My journey just through some life experiences and really learning how to learn about myself. And putting down barriers, being vulnerable, and really being vulnerable. Like I thought I was vulnerable before, but I really wasn't. And through that whole experience of learning myself, I think that does lead to being better leaders and creating better workplace cultures. So yes, it's a sequel in my mind, but it's not going to be in the same category. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, you bring up a really good point, because to be a good leader, one of the things that we have to do is really sort of go deep to our own core and decide what our values are, and sort of, are they in alignment with the companies that we work with? Because like you, I've had the privilege of speaking to a whole number of people who have gone, from corporate to self-employment, back to corporate, or they're segueing into consulting. So they're sort of, straddling those two various different disciplines. And one of the things that comes out over and over and over again is alignment of core objectives and mission. So can you expand on that a little bit? Because I know you deal with a lot of leaders. So how has that changed in the last 18 months?
Yeah, I really like how you put that, because, it's not that corporate's bad or entrepreneurship is good. It's not that at all. And sometimes people will say, is it one or the other? It's not. It's exactly that. It's what are your values? And I would also say, what are your values and what do you need at the time? So the pandemic really helped leaders, everyone, really understand what their values might be. And quite often there can be a mismatch, a misalignment, or a desire. I would really like my value to be this. So I'm going to profess that value, but not necessarily practice it. And, even for me as an entrepreneur, yes, I had my own business when the pandemic hit. I was also working with another business, and pandemic hit, and it caused me to reflect on what am I doing? What's the work I'm bringing into my clients? And I did make a decision to leave, a great group of people, a group of consultants that I'd been working with. But when I looked at where my life was heading and things that were going on in my family, I needed to do something different, because my values, I was professing them, but I wasn't practicing them. So I relaunched CarolynSwora.com, and I shifted a little bit of my work, and my work started to dig more into self-awareness and getting real. Because, we can kind of feed ourselves lines and we can do really well in our jobs, but really skim the surface. And so that's what happened for me through COVID is just doing, I know everyone doesn't like that word pivot, but I did pivot like so many people did.
Right, for sure. Now, I really love the, we all have phrases and mission statements and things like that we use from a marketing perspective to try to actually make that first connection with a prospect or a potential client. And you've called yourself the human spirit igniter. So give me a little bit of an idea as to where those three words sort of came into alignment and how you now describe yourself.
Yeah. I created my other title before too, which was Workplace Culture Architect. And I'm happy to say I created 2 titles while I was in corporate as well. So I guess I've had this like little creative piece in me. How Human Spirit Igniter came about. I was greatly influenced by a book I read by Margaret Wheatley. And she talks about warriors of the human spirit. And if anybody, she's a really interesting lady. She's quite spiritual. She's a business leader. She works in organizational development. So she's got this good blend of perspectives. And so in her work, she calls people to be warriors of the human spirit. So that's really where the human spirit thing came from. Mm-hmm. And if I'm being honest, Trish, like I would have, before the pandemic, I would have thought, Carolyn, that's a little too woo-woo. It's going to put people off.
Exactly.
And so I thought, okay, let's just test it out because I don't want to just be like everybody else. And I don't think the world needs us to all be like each other. Right. So this growth path that I've been on was really, I do want to be a human spirit igniter because I have had my own sort of spirit, my own sort of me really kind of learning about me and truly me, not me, the me that everyone thinks I need to be or the me that I think everybody wants me to be. Right. So it felt like the right time to try it out. And then this notion of igniting, I believe it's all in us. It's not like we need to, create it. It's there. And again, if I come back to my book, the book is going to be a lot of me sharing my own journey about courage and resilience and belonging and how there was always this little spirit. There was this flame in me. I just hid it for a variety of reasons. I was scared. I've been conditioned. And so Human Spirit Igniter just, I don't know, it just kind of flowed. And this great team that I work with, Krista and John, they helped me build it out from a presence and branding. And here we are.
Well, that's really fantastic because, to your point, you actually shared a very personal part of your journey and your story with us.
Yeah.
And that was, you had 2 young, children. Yep. Your husband was diagnosed with cancer and he since passed away. And that sort of put you, talk about igniting, that kind of put you on a trajectory of change, I think. Sometimes
Absolutely.
we don't always... it's not a voluntary response, right? Like sometimes the world around us sort of sets us in a different motion. So, give us a little bit of insight if you can into, how some of those barriers or roadblocks that we come across actually on the other side of them become really positive outcomes. Can you share part of those with us?
Absolutely. And this is really where I want my book to really to land for people. I'm one of the people that believe to really find your true spirit, who you are, you have to suffer. Mm-hmm. And I know that might not be something people want to hear, but we do have to go through suffering to really understand what's on the other side. And so, when Paul was diagnosed, I was pregnant with our first child. So can you imagine, 6 months pregnant, we'd only been married a year, and it's like, holy, like, this isn't the way the plan was supposed to go. But in true spirit, I just like, okay, well, this is what we have. Let's move forward. And so where a ton of my growth has been after his passing. So he passed away in 2009. So there's been 2 phases, maybe 3 actually, because the other piece I'm going to bring into the book is that my father had passed away 3 weeks before Paul did. And there was a whole history of, 30 years of my relationship with him, which wasn't a positive relationship. So, yes, I had to raise the boys after he passed away. And, I've since found another partner as wonderful and has really brought a new perspective that we all needed. And so, we blended together. We have, this new unit moving forward. And so, there's been these different phases of growth, like living with Paul and being with him during the illness and raising the boys. And then when he passed away, and me on my own, and then having this blended unit. And then through all of that, trying to, figure out what I want to be in the world and how I want to show up. And so that's really what the book is going to be. And the learning that goes through that. And I have to say, as much as I learned through his death and through his illness, I've learned a ton since I've come out of the fog.
Right.
And when you try and navigate through a crisis like that, and for anyone who's listening, there's all sorts of crises and grief that we have to work through. In my case, it was the illness and the death of a loved one. But giving yourself the space after to come out of the fog, I think I was probably in the fog longer than most, if I'm being really honest. And then going back and learning and digging in, I've learned so much about myself over the past 2 years in particular. I'm like, man, how did I make it this far? But you do. And like I said, I've learned a lot more.
It's right timing, right? Because let's think about it. Sometimes we're not open to a new door. We kind of feel comfortable in our, I know I can certainly speak from experience as well, right? Like sometimes the comfort zone that we create is there to protect us for a period of time, right? So it's the protectionism that we build into some of these different situations. And it's not until maybe the window opens a crack and the
I think that's great.
In,
right?
Yeah,
I think that's a great way you put it. And so I was in protection mode for a long time. And I had to be, and we all have to be. And so when that crack opens in the pandemic, that was the crack that opened for me. I was able to stay home and be with myself, be with my family. And it was that opportunity.
That's wonderful. So tell us, when are you intending to launch the new book? Can you share the title with us?
No, because I don't know what the title is. I don't know what it's going to be, so I can't share it. And publication is fall 2022.
Oh, well, that's great. So you've got some time. Hey, listen, we'll follow you on social media so that we can kind of see the journey. And who knows, you might have a contest or something like that to try to come up with the name.
You got it.
Right? So we can get engagement, because you know what? The people that we meet in life really are there to serve a purpose. You and I met so many years ago, and we really haven't been in touch since then. This seriously is unscripted. And, we literally came on 2 minutes before, and here we are having a conversation. So I really do think that we reconnect and we meet folks at different stages and ages in life for an absolute purpose. And so, who knows, the folks that are in your own personal network and the clients that you've worked with, there may be a really great idea there for your title, and you can kind of tap into their resources to help you name the second book, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So one of the things that we do in our guest blog is we ask folks to share 3 words of advice. And I know that when you originally shared your 3 words, they were believe in yourself, which is still really very powerful. But I know now that you've segued into a new phrase, and your phrase is invest in your self-awareness.
Yes.
So tell us, what does that mean between believe in yourself and reconnecting with your self-awareness? What kind of advice how will that help other folks who are listening or watching our discussion?
I'd say it's an evolution of, I've always believed in myself. You need to believe in yourself. There was a lot of unconscious things, were a lot of unconscious behaviors and patterns emotionally and mentally that I didn't know was driving my behavior. Yeah. So that's why I say invest in your self-awareness, because just when you think you really are aware, there's another layer there. And I remember years ago when I was in the thick of it was really some really difficult times with Paul when he was sick. And I remember my mom saying to me, and she's going to be watching this, she's like, Carolyn, you have no idea what's going on around you. Mm-hmm. And I was adamant. I'm like, yes, I do. And I got really mad at her. And I don't often get mad at my mom. And I look back and I'm like, I had no clue what was going on around me. So, that's just to share that our self-awareness, it's a journey. It's not a destination. And so invest in it, invest time, invest money, get people to help you. You can't do it alone. Mm-hmm. And you need time and money and support to be able to do that.
Well, I really want to thank you very much, Carolyn. That's a really wonderful way for us to end our discussion today, because the platform that we're actually sharing your story on is called Invest in Yourself.
Yes.
because I really do believe that there's some synergies.
Yeah.
We take a leap of faith at different times in life, and I certainly wish you all the best with the new edition of the book, and
Thank you.
the new way in which you're showing up and sharing yourself with the world. So thank you for your bravery and resilience, because those are also two qualities that it takes to kind of come out and share our self-awareness. So thank you for that.
Great. Thanks, Trish.
To our viewing and listening audience, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us for this edition of Business Mentorship, Keeping It Real, where we really have introduced you to the person behind the logo and given you a little bit of insight into Carolyn's journey. And if you have a story to share, please visit our website, shareyourstories.online, because we would love to feature you and shine a spotlight on you and your business. Thank you for joining us.